Hey everyone, it's Madaz, and yeah, I've been gone for a while. I do apologize. I've been meaning to make this video for a while. I've been really sick for the past month or so, and I didn't even have my voice for, the latter part of 3 weeks. So barely got it back a couple weeks ago, and trying to rest my voice, not trying to speak too much. But overall, it was pretty bad, and I'm glad the worst of it is over, and I can finally start making videos for you guys once again. So this is going to be the video that a lot of you guys have been asking for the past month plus or so. I keep getting messages every day. When's that video coming? When's the trade ideas video coming? And yeah, I just couldn't do it because I was just, my voice was just shot. So I'm going to do that today. This is going to be the trade ideas video that you guys have been waiting for. And, trade ideas is something I've been talking about for a while. I've been using it for about a year. And it's been very, very helpful. It's been a great addition to my trading arsenal and my tools, and it's helped me so greatly over the past year or so. And I mentioned it in my blog how you should definitely invest in your trading. When it comes to these kind of things, trading is a business just like any other startup, and a lot of people overlook that. It's the more you put into your trading, the more money you invest into yourself, the better results you're gonna get. So typically, if you're not willing to spend on the best tools, well, you're gonna be at disadvantage compared to the people that do have it. So, the bottom line is, trading is already as hard as it is. You want to find ways to minimize the difficulty and make things as easy as possible. And having a very powerful scanner like Trade Ideas definitely is one of them. So for those of you that haven't taken advantage of Trade Ideas yet already, definitely just go down below in the description. I have a link that you can click on. You can sign up, and then, like I mentioned before in the past couple videos, I've worked an agreement with them to give you guys a discount. So if you guys put in the promo code MADAZ15, that's MADAZ15, you guys can get 15% off, and that code pretty much works at any time. Once in a while during the holidays, they do have a sale or something like that, so you might want to check out on that. But my MADAZ15 code pretty much works any time of the year, so definitely check that out if you haven't done so already. But overall, I just want to talk about Trade Ideas. When you log on to Trade Ideas, a lot of guys keep telling me, there's a lot of stuff going on, there's a lot of buttons, I'm confused. And believe me, I was one of those guys. When I first logged on to Trade Ideas, I was pretty lost. And there's just a lot of things, a lot of options, a lot of things you can play with. And I'm not gonna lie, it took me about a couple months actually to really narrow down the strategies and the options that I really wanted. And I want to keep things simple. If you guys know me as a trader, I always like to simplify things. I'm very organized. You look at my screen, my trading screen typically, just the 4 charts, the 4 level 2s, the 4 time and sales. And if you look at the chart itself, there's no fancy indicators, just basic support, resistance, and VWAP. So nothing too complicated. Trading is already as convoluted as it is. It's very difficult. No reason to make it even more difficult by confusing yourself with needless complexities. So the first thing I look at Trade Ideas is I see that there's a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of really useful stuff that they have here. I was looking through this, and they got their own preset pre-market scanner. They got this cool social media option where you kind of see who's talking about what on stock twits or whatever, and they got their own volume scanner. They got some sectors. They got looks like kind of like a new big gainers on a day kind of tab here. They got options, they got earnings, they got a lot of good stuff here. But if you're trying to trade and you're using a scanner, you want information very, very quickly in a very simplified form, because as we all know, speed is one of the most important aspects when it comes to trading. You want to get the symbol fast, and you want to be able to get in and out of your stock and make your money, right? So when I see a screen has all this stuff going on, when I'm looking at it, it's just too confusing to me. Okay, and not to discount the stuff that's on here. They got really good stuff. But definitely I want to keep things simple. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys my screen, my layout, and you almost laugh how simple it is. It's so basic and like just like the way I like it, really. But basically, it's just these four windows right here, and I'll explain to you what they are. So I forgot to mention that another reason why I went with Trade Ideas is that my first broker was E-Trade, and their platform is called E-Trade Pro, and I also found out that Trade Ideas had a hand in making the E-Trade Pro scanner, which I really enjoyed. And if you guys have followed me since the beginning of my trading journey, and some of my older videos, I actually made a video about the E-Trade Pro scanner. So that was a huge selling point for me into going with Trade Ideas because I'm pretty sure I'd be familiar with a lot of the features that they had. So that was one reason why I went with them. The Thinkorswim scanner, not so much. That was the second broker I used, TD Ameritrade. But the E-Trade scanner I really enjoyed. And after I left E-Trade and I moved on to TD Ameritrade and SpeedTrader, I definitely thought that the E-Trade Pro scanner was one of the better ones that I used. So I'm really glad now that I found Trade Ideas and they use pretty much the same features. So that's pretty cool. But back to what I was saying. So this is pretty much my screen. So the two windows right here are basically my momentum scanners. These are stocks that pop up randomly midday or at the open. And it's very useful, and I tweeted about this, when you have, several possible gappers that you get off of your gap scan, which is these two windows on the right, this being the gap up scanner, and this being the gap down scanner. If you narrow it down and you kind of realize that there's still maybe, 4, 5, 6 possible plays, the momentum scanner really helps because it'll just spam the same stock and you realize that, okay, that's the one, that's it, as opposed to you kind of frantically trying to figure out which one is it, and then by the time you do, you kind of miss the move. So that really helps a lot. That's one aspect that I really like about having a scanner like this. It really helps you pick out the right play and you don't accidentally jump into the wrong one, because when you do that you jump into the wrong stock and you might lose money. You probably will lose money, and secondly you'll probably miss the real play at the same time, so it's sort of a double whammy. So you don't want to be put in that situation, and having a scanner like this set up in a certain way but that will spit out the right play will help alleviate that kind of problem. So like I said, these two windows on the left are my momentum scanners, and for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to talk about my gap scanners today. This is the easier thing to go over. Pretty much is a huge part of my pre-market ritual. Before, I was just using the dash top list as my gap scanner, but obviously the dash top list won't include all of this information, which is a huge plus on Trade Ideas as well, because you can kind of have all of this information in the same spot. You don't have to keep checking on FinViz or something. This is pretty neat. I have all this stuff right here, and it's all in the same spot. You can look at the float information. This is the price of the stock, the change, the float, and it's sorted by the change, by the way. Shares outstanding, float, short float, change, dollars, gap, volume index or something like that. I'm not sure what this is. Yeah, relative volume, total volume, institution owned. Right, this is obviously something I always talk about, and I like to have that information readily available. Stock twits activity and so on. So this is pretty cool. And you can also look at obviously what kind of sector it's in. These are mostly biotech stocks that gapped up today. So that's pretty cool. I really enjoy the fact that I can see all the information in one spot, and it really helps me narrow down the focus and minimize a lot of the work that I have to do if you had to kind of look each stock up separately. So I'm going to go ahead and change the time back to pre-market so you can see what the gappers were before the market opened. And this is another pretty cool feature as well. It's because you can edit your settings and you can go back in time and back test them by looking at previous historical data. So for example, if you're trying to configure your gap scanner settings to a certain liking, and or you want to look for a certain stock, you can kind of go back to anytime you want, and then try to see if your settings can find that stock that you want, or a series or a set of stocks that you want, which is pretty cool because then okay, yeah, these settings work for this, and then probably the next time you'll find the equivalent type of plays. So that's really nice to have. I used this feature a lot when I was trying to backtest my settings. You don't have to wait for an actual trading day and try to figure out if your settings actually work. You can kind of just play with it all day, and then eventually you'll find out that some settings will eventually find certain stocks. So that's pretty cool. So let's just go back in time, a little time machine here. Let's go back 9:25. Let's say 5 minutes before the open, and see what our gappers were. All right, so we can see our gappers: CITC, CTIC, peers, CEB, ETRM, FCSC. Cool. So as you can see, what I was talking about, there are a lot of possibilities that could have been the play. And I'm looking at all these gappers, and I'm kind of confused. Obviously, I'm going to be looking at the charts for all of these plays on my platform, and I'll be looking at the daily chart and the usual technical analysis that I do. But of course, I look at other things too. You got the float information here. I'm looking at a stock with 200,000 plus 200 plus million shares. Typically not my kind of stock. So I'll still have it on watch, but I'm typically more of a low float kind of guy. So this is where you can kind of filter out these plays, right? So ETRM was one of the lower floats, so I kind of figured it'd probably be one of the bigger movers. So that one was on my priority list. And also Cool, which also had a 9 million float, which is fairly low. A couple others as well. EVOC, which is an old play. I kind of figured maybe it wouldn't do much because it already got pumped and dumped a couple days ago. But ETRM was a pretty prime suspect, gapping up 22%, and 2 million float, 2 million shares outstanding. I don't think this float information is correct here, but a pretty low float stock, and Cool as well. So these two were the ones I was looking at, but I didn't completely discount the other ones. But nonetheless, overall, you see that there were some pretty good candidates. We got four stocks, as a matter of fact, gapping over 22%, and several gapping in a double-digit percent. So definitely a lot of candidates, and this is where the momentum scanner would really come into play. I'm just going to demonstrate. I'm not going to talk about the settings for the momentum scanner today, but I'm going to show how it definitely came into play and was very useful in determining that ETRM was the main stock of the day. So like the historical data feature on the gappers, you can also do this for the momentum scanner, and obviously it's going to be arranged because it's a kind of a time frame kind of thing. So you want to see from the open, I suppose. So 9:30, and then let's just say 10 o'clock or something like that. And most recent alert. Okay. All right. So you can see at the open, it's kind of spit out ETRM. It's pretty much screaming in your face that ETRM is the play. So out of all of these gappers that you see, ETRM was the only stock that was being spat out by my momentum scanner for like several minutes. So it's like telling you, hey, it's 9:31, 9:32, 9:33, 9:34, 9:35. And by 9:38, if you don't realize that ETRM is the play, there's something wrong with you. So definitely this was pretty obvious. That's why I wanted to make the video today. It's a really good example of how having a good gap scanner, picking out the plays, sorting them out by preference. So for me personally, I like low price, lower float stocks. So I'm looking at this gap scanner, and I see ETRM, one of the lower floats. Cool. Another one. So kind of narrow it down to maybe a couple there, and then you look at the momentum scanner, and then you see ETRM kind of spit it out. So that's how I use trade ideas pretty much to play the open. Okay, so let's go look at the settings, which is probably what you guys are waiting for. So one thing that's really cool about this is obviously the ability to set up all of these. So you can pick, whatever category you want on your gap scanners. That's really, really nice to have. So you pretty much just get it from here. So if you want to, let's see. Add whatever you want. Float is already added. If you wanted to add held by insiders or something, and then you can kind of filter out whatever you want to it. And then see. Oh, here we go. Apologize for that, wasn't it? You go to columns, rather, if you want to add something in one of the columns appropriately. You go to one of these and then you add it. So these are the selected columns, and then it should give you an option. There you go. Held by insiders is now added. So if you click OK, now you'll see that held by insiders is now added. Okay, so that's how you add columns to your gap scanner. Okay, so let's go back to configure. And by the way, this window is called the top list window. So if you want to make a new one, you click on that, and then it'll show you, whatever you want. So this is called top list window, and then the momentum scanner window is called the multi-strategy window. Okay, so configure. So we just learned how to add columns. So the columns are all right here. You can add whatever you want. Hide, unused, more, and you can add whatever you want. There's a list of all of them right here. There's a ton of them, so that you can use to add in the columns. So with regards to the filters, this is where my settings are. This is pretty nice. As you can see, I don't really have many settings at all. Pretty much I just have the price, the volume, and the average daily volume, and that's about it. And I backtest this with a Madaz top list and make sure that it shoots out the same stocks. So it definitely reinforces what settings work. So the numbers that you want to play with is basically price. Obviously, if you want to play lower price stocks than 50 cents, you put 25 cents or whatever you want. Or if you don't like, you want to filter those out, you put 1. It's a matter of preference. With regards to volume, if you put a number that's too big, it'll filter out too many stocks, because some of these stocks they gap up, but they don't trade much volume pre-market, and then they move at the open. So you don't want to miss that. So you want to play with this parameter. If it doesn't find a certain stock, lower the number a little bit. But you put the number too low, then it's going to shoot out a bunch of garbage. So you kind of have to balance it. And I eventually figured out that 2,500 is a good balance. But if I ever run into a situation where it doesn't find a certain stock or whatever, try lowering it to 2,000, 1,500 or whatever, until it starts spitting out useless garbage that you don't really need. Same with average daily volume. If you put a number that's too big, it'll filter out too many stocks. If you put a number too small, then same reason, it will just spit out too much garbage, and it's just going to take up your screen, and you're not going to want all that information. So pretty much, this is really all I have. Like I said, it's really, really simple, guys. After I put these settings, I just sort it by change, and that's pretty much it. It's really nothing special. With regards to the gap down, it's the same thing. The same settings, except obviously I just do the reverse, right? I just click on percent down instead. So really nothing special about this. Really not too difficult at all. It's just that it took me a while to figure out which number was the best to put in for average daily volume 5-day and 2,500 shares for volume today. It took me a while to figure that out, but other than that, it works pretty well. You could put some, obviously, other criteria. Obviously, if you want to restrict the change from the close to, maybe you want to only you only play gaps that are over 20% or something like that. That could be something that you have a preference for, and that's fine. Same thing with gap. Maybe you only play stocks that gap up at least 10%, right? And these other features are just a matter of preference. Okay, maybe you only play stocks that are max float of 1 million shares or something, right? 10 million shares rather. So, or maybe you only play stocks that are at most 50% institution owned. So the rest is just all a matter of preference. I personally like to look at everything so I can make my own judgment call during the actual trading process itself in the morning in the pre-market session. I'm looking at it and I want to be able to make a decision on every single candidate, and I don't want to eliminate anything with these restrictive parameters before I get a chance to look at the stock. Because usually if I typically don't play larger float stocks like CITC with 200 million shares, but remember, we had some pretty good thick stocks that moved pretty well. We had NVAX a couple months ago. Obviously a popular one last year was SUNE. That was a pretty thick stock. Some of the other oil names were pretty thick as well. So that doesn't mean that they're not going to be in play. So that's why I don't want to rule them out. So personally for me, I don't mind playing those stocks. It's just not my preference. But if they are the best stock that's in play, then I don't mind playing them. So like I said, it's just a matter of preference, guys. I just keep it simple so I can look at every single play and make a call for myself. So, like I said, guys, very simple. It's nothing too complicated at all. Just get a gap scanner. You can add your own columns, whatever you want. Like I showed you. You can sort them by whatever you want. You could sort this by float. You could sort this by change from the gap. There we go. Right? But I just use change from the close because sometimes the stock doesn't gap, but it ends up taking off at the open for whatever reason. So for that reason, you can see my logic behind why my settings aren't very restrictive, because sometimes you get some weird action. Sometimes the stock doesn't gap, so technically there's no gap, but then at the open it'll just shoot up randomly with volume. And then if you have a restrictive gap setting, it won't find that stock because that stock didn't gap. It had a 0% gap, but then the change from the close is now like 30% or something. So it'll block that. So that's why I sort by change from close instead. Okay, so that's one thing. And like I said, I don't want to put any severe volume restrictions as well, because sometimes the stock doesn't trade any volume for the past couple of days and it just gets volume out of nowhere. Sometimes the stock trades nothing during the pre-market and it just takes off. And if you put a volume restriction that's too, it just limits everything too much, then it won't find these stocks. So it took me a couple months to kind of realize this, so I'm just sharing that information with you guys. Have some pretty loose criteria, and then if you feel like it's still spilling out too much garbage, then you can kind of restrict the settings. Play with the settings until it works. That's the beauty of this software. There's no one way. We're all different traders. We all trade different styles. We play different types of stocks. So just tailor them to your liking. Figure out what works for you guys, and I hope this video is something that you guys find helpful. And the next time I'll make part 2 and I'll explain the Momo scanner, which is a little bit more settings involved, a little bit more complicated. So I didn't want to just throw the book at you guys, one thing at a time. And hopefully you guys will be around to check that out. And I'll try my best to get that video out sometime next week, health permitting. All right, guys, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.